Part 18. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 171. Zuyun immediately came back to his senses. It seemed that this was a good opportunity to be alone with Ye Xianming. But he didn't dare to completely underestimate Ye Xianming. Assuming that he really had spiritual fire in his body, would he still have the ability to control spiritual fire attacks? Not to mention, there are some backhand skills that have never been shown. But Zuyun also knew that Ye Xianming was also wary of Mengwei, and wondered if he could borrow Mengwei's hand. In the blink of an eye, Zuyun felt like lightning. I thought about countless possibilities in my mind. After I was completely sure that I had enough means to ensure safety, I immediately rode on Zhao Kamang. He deliberately did not respond to Ye Xianming's words, and gave Zhao Kamang an order in his mind to pursue his dream without limit at full speed. Ye Xianming laughed twice. "Let me tell you, my nephew must be embarrassed, so he asked me to come and have a look." The big dog didn't take it seriously, but still urged, "Go, go, go. Xiao Zhu's lifelong events depend on you, Lao Ye." Chen Hua curled his lips and said, "Lao Ye, his own wife ran away with someone, what else can you expect from him?" Ergu did frown and said nothing. He didn't know what he was thinking. But no one would notice him at this time. Ye Xianming sacrificed his natal magic weapon, which was in the shape of a fire stick. He stepped on it and flew while shouting loudly, "Master nephew, wait for me. Master uncle has something to tell you." The sound reached Zuyun's ears from afar. He sneered in his heart, but did not speed up. The reason why Zhao Kamang sat out was not only to ensure that his spiritual power would not be consumed on the road, but also to give him an extra helper. Far away, Mengwei's face turned red, and his heart was extremely confused. Compared to Zuyun's calmness, she did not save her spiritual power at all. The knife under her feet kept shining with a dark red light, indicating that she was flying with all her strength. Even Mengwei didn't notice at all that the direction she was facing was exactly the center of the secret realm, where the great formation was. Zuyun wanted to take Ye Xianming away from their resting place, so he followed Mengwei slowly. After Zhao Kamang transformed into a monster, his body became stronger, although his realm was slightly weaker than Mengwei. But the speed at which he was running wildly on the ground was not frightening at all. But unfortunately, this was a pain for Ye Xianming, who was stepping on the fire stick behind him. At first, he still had enough energy to roar a few times, but after half an hour, he was swallowing various pills like jelly beans to replenish his consumption. In order to get Zuyun's cauldron, he spent a lot of money. Low-lying land. Luo Yanran's golden elixir also fell on the ground, using the cover of the grass to block her elixir glow. Although she is in the elixir formation stage, she only has the golden elixir, and her spiritual power recovery speed is extremely slow, and now it is less than 1 in 100. She just wants to save her spiritual energy as much as possible so that she can successfully possess her when she meets a suitable female cultivator. Only then can she have the opportunity to leave the secret realm safely and search for fragments among the rubble of Zilang Peak. She didn't think about attacking Ergu, but she was also afraid that Mengwei would be unhappy and turn against him. She knew very well the temperament of the disciple who she had raised with her own hands. Not to mention that she deliberately brought Mengwei and Zuyun together, let alone De Go and Ergu. Even Chen Hua had a very close relationship with Zuyun. "Ergu, what are your plans next?" After deciding not to return to Wanjian Mountain with Chen Hua, De Go felt the need to discuss it with Ergu. Chen Hua also felt nervous and looked at Ergu involuntarily, wanting to know how he would answer. The two of them had discussed before and planned to follow Zuyun. After all, they had no burden and the worst they could do was become a casual cultivator. And they have special trust in Zuyun, and it is the kind of relationship where they can completely leave their backs to each other. It's just that Ergu's situation is relatively complicated now. Firstly, he was only at the 9th level of Qi refining, and secondly, he was related to Yaluo sect. Hearing this, Luo Yanran, who was not far away, couldn't help but pricked up his ears. I miss home. Ergu uttered 4 words lightly, and then fell backwards. When he was lying on the grass, he put his hands behind his head and looked up at the sky of the secret realm. What do you mean? Don't you want to pursue the path of immortality? The big dog heard the hidden meaning and immediately became anxious. Ergu murmured, Big dog, I'm already on the immortal path, but there is still an immortal wall on my immortal path. If I pursue it, I will just hit the wall. Instead of spending 100 years of life to hit the south wall, it is better to enjoy for the rest of my life. Chen Hua finally got smart for once and said anxiously, Ergo, what's wrong with the 3 spiritual roots? I also have the 3 spiritual roots. Do you think I've still reached the foundation building stage? Yes, Ergu. Daegu finally understood that Ergu was obsessed with his own talent and was afraid that it would drag him and others down. In desperation, he shook his head and said, You are not alone. We are walking with Xiaozu and taking care of each other. Just like before in Barren Rock Mountain. Chen Hua also immediately expressed his position, plus me. As long as you don't dislike me, I will definitely follow you. Stop talking, I want to be quiet. The 4 of them all started from the Lingjian sect, and Zuyun was considered the most dangerous, but because of his vigilance and the relationship with the Diwu glazed mirror, he was able to turn danger into good fortune every time. But Ergu is the most difficult. In any other Qi refining period, he might have died, but Ergu has survived until now. It's not that he was completely discouraged, but that he was a little tired. The big dog had 1,000 things to say to the second dog, but he still respected the second dog's thoughts and said no more. He also fell back and lay side by side with the second dog. Just when Chen Hua also fell next to Ergu, a loud rumble came from underneath him, and the ground began to shake. Luo Yanran's golden elixir suddenly shot out from under the grass roots, flew in front of the 3 of them, and said urgently, According to my estimation, the exit of the secret realm is about to appear. Are you leaving now or will we talk later? She is actually very awake. It is safest to follow Menghui in the secret realm, but what about leaving the secret realm? The outside world is Yaesu where the Danja period exists. And in the past half-month, she has been asking about the situation in the outside world. She knows that when the secret realm is opened, some disciples of the sect forces are escorted by the elders of the Danja stage. If he goes out and hides in Menghui's sleeves, the risk will naturally be extremely high. The ground was still shaking, and even the space in front of him was shaking. The big dog sat up and said in a deep voice, Senior, let's wait until Xiao Zhu and the others come back. I'm afraid that my master from Wanjian Mountain is waiting outside. Chen Hua also said quickly, Yes, Senior, it doesn't matter if we die, we are still afraid of dragging you down. Luo Yanran was speechless for a while, and then said quietly, Will Jianshiba's stubborn mind recognize you as daughters? It suddenly dawned on the 2 of them, and Big Dog also began to think about the feasibility. Luo Yanran didn't rush because she didn't know where the exit was at this time. The big dog thought for a moment and said, Senior, if we all leave, I wish they would come back. Luo Yanran smiled sweetly and interrupted Big Dog, Of course they can't all leave. Doesn't Ergu want to be alone? Why not let him wait here? Wait until Zuyun and my disciple come back, just tell us where you are. After hearing this, De Go and Chen Hua immediately said in unison, No. I know that you are worried that Ergu is only at the 9th level of Qi refining and will not be able to protect himself if he stays here. Luo Yanran saw through their thoughts at a glance and said, But you might as well listen to my plan to have both sides first. Senior, please speak. First, the aura of the 2 of you is completely different from that of Ergu. If you go out rashly, you will naturally attract others' attention. Secondly, I am the master of Yoluo sect after all. I can teach Ergu the unique method of gathering breath. As long as he doesn't move around, no one will notice him. Because of the unique relationship between Qi refining method of Yoluo sect, the 9th level of Qi refining is a hurdle. Only when you reach the state can you learn subsequent exercises. The breath-holding technique that Luo Yanran mentioned was actually the one that Meng Wei mastered. Before the big dog could speak, the second dog suddenly sat up and said, I also think this is the best. With more people, there will be more trouble. Why not go out and meet up with Yoluo sect then? Ergu, you. The big dog wanted to say something else, but he suddenly thought that since it was Ergu who agreed and followed Zuyun by then, he might have given up on going home. This couldn't be better. He winked at Chen Hua, signaling him not to speak, so as not to irritate the two dogs, and then looked at Luo Yanran, Senior, please give me all you have to teach me. Luo Yanran was overjoyed when he heard this and said, this is natural. Ergu, you come with me, and the other two boys, you should be careful about this place and don't let anyone disturb you. The two nodded repeatedly and drew out their long swords to prepare for the attack. The vibrations on the ground began to diminish, and the loud noises stopped. I don't know how many miles away and in all directions, some things began to appear faintly, exactly the same as the scene in front of the light door that opened the entrance to the secret realm. Ergu, sit down. After staying a little away from the two big dogs, Luo Yanran also said solemnly. Although you are a male cultivator, since you have practiced the Yoluo Qi refining method of our sect and have achieved some success in breaking through to the 9th level, I also regard you as a disciple of the Yoluo sect. The matter is of great importance at this time. I will use the supreme method to directly imprint the 3 techniques on your soul. You only need to practice the breath-gathering method first and wait for Wei and the others to come back. Ergu showed no fear, raised his head and said, I know. You boy, you have a good nature, but it's a pity that you are a man. Luo Yanran didn't know what to think, so she sighed inexplicably, and then shouted in a deep voice, relax, this palace is about to begin. Hundreds of miles away, feeling the vibration of the secret mirror, Meng Wei also hurriedly fell from the sky. As soon as she stood firm, the shaking on the ground disappeared. When she looked back, she found that Zuyun behind her had disappeared at some point, and she felt panicked for no reason. Little did she know that just 50 miles behind her, Zuyunzhen was eye to eye with Ye Xianming. Master nephew, what's the look in your eyes? Ye Xianming didn't know it yet, so he asked cheerfully, wondering if Zuyun disliked him for ruining his good fortune of getting the beauty back. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 172. Zuyun rolled his eyes and said, since master knows, why are you still chasing after me? Ye Xianming pretended to be concerned and said, this is because my nephew is too young, so he wants to come over and give some advice. Furthermore, when discussing marriage, elders are always required to be present, and now your master is not here, then of course your uncle will take care of the wedding gift for you. As he spoke, he even patted his chest, as if he was determined to take care of everything. Zuyun's heart was like a mirror, but he couldn't help but have another thought in his mind, but he did not dare to show it at all. Instead, he said, Uncle, although this disciple has known Master Meng for a long time, after all, their identities are as different as clouds and mud. From what the disciples have seen, let's forget it, right? How does this work? Ye Xianming blurted out, Palace Master Meng's master, Palace Master Luo, who is so eloquent, will definitely not embarrass us with the betrothal gift. Who knows? A hint of imperceptible amusement flashed in Zuyun's eyes, and he said, although Yoluo sect no longer exists, a figure like Palace Master Luo must save face. Even if he doesn't care, what about Palace Master Meng Xiao? At least he did the same back then. It's a bit difficult for a big shot in the core building stage to marry a guy like me who is in the early stage of foundation building. This. Ye Xianming didn't know that Zhu Yun was cheating, so he scratched his head and gritted his teeth and said, if this is really the case, then the uncle can only refine a few long-lost elixirs as betrothal gifts. To be honest, Zhu Yun is still not very interested in elixirs. After all, as long as his realm improves, the wooden shelves in the alchemy room can be opened one after another. There is no doubt that all kinds of elixirs are hidden inside. And after listening to what Ye Xianming said about erysipelas before, he had always paid attention to it. He felt that during the journey of cultivation, he could still take as little elixirs as possible, so he took as little as possible. But at this time, Ye Xianming showed his flaws, and he happily followed Ye Xuanming's words. I saw a look of surprise on Zhu Yun's face, and said in shock, a lost elixir. I saw Ye Xianming being very proud and said, that's natural. Is your title of alchemy demon, uncle master, unearned? Why did I go to the Peeper realm back then, uncle master? It was precisely because the land there was vast, rich in resources, and the level was higher. Although many elixir recipes have been lost, but there are still some elixirs left. Master, I used Chengdan's reverse reasoning to re-research the elixir recipe. Zhu Yun also knew this method of studying elixirs, and Sun Suanhua also told him, but the success rate was extremely low. Just like the previous red blood pill, although Zhu Yun could identify the main ingredients of the red blood pill by smelling the fragrance, it would be absolutely impossible for him to refine it without thousands of tests. Successful. Even if he has Fen Tianyan in hand. But in other words, since Ye Xianming can achieve this, either he is really talented in the alchemy path, or he also has a backer in the Peeper realm. Otherwise, how could he, a foundation building alchemy master, be able to afford such a huge consumption of elixirs? Thinking of this, Zhu Yun also gave Ye Xianming a high look. Perhaps that cynical look from beginning to end was just put on by him to confuse others. If this is really the case, then Ye Xianming will definitely not be allowed to stay. But now, he knew nothing about his furnace. If Ye Xianming was killed by force, the secret would have to be buried for who knows how long. Zhu Yun felt a little reluctant. He has also used this cauldron to refine many elixirs, but has never found anything strange about it, which means that the magic of this cauldron lies elsewhere. So uncle, what kind of elixir are you going to refine? Zhu Yun asked while thinking about countermeasures. But as soon as he finished speaking, Meng Wei quietly landed between the two of them. She asked with a puzzled look on her face, what are you doing? Ye Xianming was immediately overjoyed and shouted, Master Mengyang Palace. But Zhu Yun couldn't help but have a worried look in his eyes. He wanted to tell Meng Wei to come to him quickly, but he was afraid of arousing Ye Xuanming's caution and didn't care whether it would cause misunderstanding. He said, Wei, come to me, I have something to tell you. Meng Wei didn't know the reason. Hearing Zhu Yun's affectionate address, he finally calmed down, but his face turned red again and his heart trembled. He, Ye Xianming raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, Master Meng, I am discussing the betrothal gift with my nephew. We are talking about refining some long-lost elixirs. In fact, his thinking was too simple, thinking that Luo Yanran had already signed the Yuan Yang book, and Meng Wei, as a disciple, would not dare to resist. In addition, I help Meng Wei heal his injuries, so he can put pressure on Zhu Yun through Meng Wei. As long as Zhu Yun takes out the cauldron, everything will be easy to handle. Ye Xianming, don't talk nonsense. I am free to decide on my marriage. Why don't you give me a betrothal gift? A dog can't spit out ivory. Meng Wei cursed Ye Xianming angrily, but he couldn't help but walk towards Zhu Yun. Zhu Yun didn't bother to explain, and took out a few spiritual stones from his storage bag and directly laid out a soundproof formation, covering both of them. Then he showed a bright smile and said to Mengwei, Mengwei, Ye Xianming has ulterior motives, I don't know if I can trust you. Seeing Zhu Yun's method, Ye Xianming said with disdain in his heart, this boy is not bad at waving his hands to form a formation. It's a pity that unless the attainment of this formation is great, it will be useless. Among the formation masters in the Peeper realm, which one is better than me? The soundproof formation could only isolate sound, but could not block Ye Xianming from seeing what was going on, and Zhu Yun's smile naturally fell into his eyes. He curled his lips again, feeling that Zhu Yun must also be attracted to Mengwei. Also, Mengwei's beauty can be said to be unrivaled in Yeazhu, but not everyone can be like me, cut off lust and pursue the path wholeheartedly, so that they can achieve what they are today. However, this is also a good thing for him, as he can use Mengwei's favor more. He wished that Zhu Yun and Mengwei could get married now. And in the formation, Zhu Yun's tone was completely opposite to his expression, which made Mengwei slightly stunned. She is not stupid. Based on the current scene, she immediately knew Zhu Yun's intention. What you up to? When it comes to disguise and acting, it couldn't be simpler for Mengwei, who was moody before. You know, Sun Xuanhua, who was over 200 years old at the time, was almost deceived by Mengwei. When he asked this question, Mengwei even lowered his head shyly and fiddled with the corners of his clothes nervously. Zhu Yun felt angry and funny in his heart. Mengwei was worthy of the name of a little witch. At the same time, he was secretly relieved. There was a frivolous expression on his face, but his tone was full of murderous intent. He wants to kill me, I think strike first to gain the upper hand. Suddenly, Mengwei raised his head suddenly, his beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. What? Ye Xianming was slightly dissatisfied and murmured, did this kid say something sarcastic? Or he made some unreasonable request? He is really brave enough. Aren't you afraid that Mengwei will do it? Since he recognized that this was a soundproof formation, he was naturally not afraid of being heard by the two of them. But in his opinion, it would be best if Mengwei killed Zhu Yun in a fit of anger. I can completely take the cauldron as my own on the pretext of helping him refine elixirs, and all the blame will not be placed on myself. How wonderful! Thinking of this, Ye Xianming couldn't wait to look at the two of them. Unfortunately, Mengwei and Zhu Yun both turned sideways towards him, unable to distinguish their lip shapes and guess their words. Why did he want to kill you for no reason? Mengwei, who knew he had lost his composure, caught a glimpse of Ye Xianming looking at the two of them from the corner of his eye, and immediately lowered his head and asked in a deep voice. You know he wants my cauldron, right? Zhu Yun patted the storage bag and immediately took out the Zongji furnace cauldron. At the same time, he used the cover of the furnace cauldron to block Ye Xianming from watching. Mengwei also took the opportunity to come to Zhu Yun's side. Finally, he no longer had to pretend, and said softly, this is just a Zongji furnace, just give it to him. After all, he has done a lot to help me heal my wounds. Count me Mengwei, I owe you a favor. It's not that simple. You didn't notice that he showed murderous intent at the time. Zhu Yun shook his head and stated all his guesses. When Zhu Yun finished speaking, Mengwei suddenly fell into silence. After a long while, Mengwei finally said, then you took out the cauldron now to trick him into revealing the secret of the cauldron. Yes, if you can cooperate with me, I, Zhu Yun, owe you a favor. If you are unwilling because he helps you heal your injuries, I hope you will not interfere when I take action. Zhu Yun, Mengwei sighed and said with some self-deprecation, you know that although I am a demonic witch, I still have a clear distinction between grudges and grudges. Hearing this, Zhu Yun could only show helplessness, I won't force it. Mengwei smiled bitterly and said, Zhu Yun, you are wrong about what I mean. I can cooperate with you in acting, but there is one requirement. If we can obtain the secret of this furnace, can we let him live? Zuyun was slightly startled and said, Mengwei, I understand your difficulties. But if you let people like Ye Xianming leave, I'm afraid you will let the tiger go back to the mountain. I also know that you are worried that he has a backer in the Peeper realm. Mengwei put an end to Zuyun's worries and continued, Don't worry, I just want to keep him alive. When the time comes, I will trap him in Yaluo sect, not to let him go back. Zuyun's expression changed and he said anxiously, This is not possible. People like him must have some means of contacting the powerful people in the Peeper realm. If so, wouldn't you be in danger? Hearing that Zuyun was worried about his own safety, Mengwei's mood relaxed for no reason, but then dimmed. Yu said, Do you think I am still afraid of death? Zuyun suddenly choked on his words, and Mengwei said again, Stop talking, Ye Xianming should be suspicious if you talk anymore. After saying that, Mengwei suddenly kicked over the furnace cauldron, clenched his sword to cut through the soundproof formation, and immediately placed it between Zuyun's neck, and said angrily, You are a prodigal son, are you here, to humiliate me? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 173. Feeling the extremely sharp momentum between his neck, Zuyun was afraid that if Mengwei's hand trembled, his life would be gone. This witch's ability to turn her face at any time is really invincible in the world. If it weren't for the agreed understanding that she was acting, Zuyun almost thought that he had just teased her. And this sudden change also made Ye Xianming dumbfounded. He had imagined countless possibilities, but he had never imagined such a scene. Although he was thinking about killing him quickly, he had to pretend to be anxious on his face, and stepped forward to persuade, Young Master Meng, don't do it. My nephew is young, if there is anything offensive, it won't be like this. Humph, for Ye Xianming's sake, I will spare your life. But the death penalty can be avoided, but the living crime cannot be escaped. While speaking, Mengwei turned his dark red knife over and smashed it hard with the back of the knife. There was a dull sound of iron entering the flesh, and Zuyun's whole body went limp, and he rolled his eyelids as if he had fainted. Of course, this was also his pretense, but Zuyun cursed in his heart, this Mengwei was really cruel. But he also knew that if he wasn't cruel, he would not be able to deceive Ye Xianming. Fortunately, he had taken many bodybuilding pills before, and although it hurt, his body was not damaged at all. Ye Xianming was overjoyed, and kept calling out, Master Meng, although your injuries have recovered, don't get angry, so as not to affect your mood. I will refine a few King's In pills for you. Without waiting for Mengwei to speak, he went straight over and helped up the furnace, because Zuyun had said before that he would never agree to give him the furnace, and Ye Xianming was afraid that if he took the furnace directly, it would be too abrupt, which would arouse Mengwei's suspicion. Unexpectedly, at this time, a light suddenly shone, and a light gate suddenly appeared in front of Mengwei. This is the light gate that can leave the secret realm. Both of them were stunned. Ye Xianming made a prompt decision and quickly put the furnace into his storage bag. He rushed towards the light gate with the steps of Changshengju. Mengwei's face changed, and he didn't care about acting anymore. He immediately slashed in the direction where Ye Xianming was running, and shouted at the same time, Ye Xianming, didn't you say you would help me refine the King's In pill? Mengwei's knife was only to stop Ye Xianming, but he didn't use his full strength. But he never thought that Ye Xianming thought Mengwei wanted to kill him, and because the furnace was already in his storage bag, he used his full strength. He just heard the two words fire burst out of his mouth, and a flame rose from his hand. As soon as he threw it towards Mengwei, it immediately formed a fire dragon. Mengwei was caught off guard. He didn't expect that an alchemist in the early stage of foundation building would have such a method. He didn't have time to dodge and was instantly swallowed by the fire dragon. Ah! A shrill scream sounded, and the power of the fire dragon seemed to naturally restrain his Yoluo magic power. Not only was the whole person injured by the extreme high temperature, but the spiritual power in his body was also consumed by the flames. It was just a blink of an eye. Zuyun had no time to react, and Mengwei was already dying. Mengwei, you dare to stop me? Yasuanming's chest rose and fell slightly, but he kept gasping for breath. Obviously, this consumed a lot of him. At this time, his face was full of cruelty. While speaking, the fire dragon turned back into a flame and jumped into Yasuanming's palm. Why? Mengwei couldn't help but feel a little regretful at this time, and asked this question with difficulty. And if Zuyun, who pretended to be unconscious, could open his eyes and look in the mirror, he would definitely see his completely red eyes. Because Mengwei was so seriously injured for him. Or maybe it was because he underestimated Ye Xianming again. However, this was obviously not a good opportunity for a surprise attack, because Zuyun was not completely sure of facing the attack of the fire dragon. He suppressed his anger. Since Ye Xianming was not in a hurry to leave, he could wait a little longer. At the same time, he had completely forgotten about the furnace and was more concerned about Mengwei's safety. I don't know whether Ye Xianming felt that he was no longer in danger, or because he had just consumed a lot of energy, he didn't dare to go out directly. He took out a different red blood pill and swallowed it into his mouth, and then made an unexpected move. He actually took out the Zongji furnace again. There is no reason. Anyone who prevents me from achieving great success in the way of alchemy is my enemy. As he spoke, Ye Xianming stretched out his hand and threw the flame out again, but this time, the flame was thrown under the furnace. I'm very sorry, Master Meng. After the flame left his palm, Ye Xianming seemed to have become more energetic. He first glanced at Zuyun not far away, and then looked directly into Mengwei's eyes and said, if you want to blame you, blame my nephew. If he could have given me this furnace at that time, how could this happen today? Mengwei's spirit was getting worse and worse. She seemed to feel that she was not far from death. Perhaps because of this, Ye Xianming became a little outspoken. When she heard that it seemed that she could get the secret about the furnace, Mengwei used all her strength and bit her tongue. She was shocked by the severe pain. But Mengwei also knew that this was just a flash of life. But at least, she could live up to Zuyun. Because she knew that Zuyun was pretending to be unconscious. This furnace has nothing to do with your alchemy, right? After biting the tip of his tongue, Mengwei's speech became coherent. He still remembered one of the doubts Zuyun told him, which was how could a pill demon like Ye Xianming not have a good furnace? How come it doesn't matter? Ye Xianming also knew that Mengwei would definitely die. Since he was dead, he was not afraid of the secret being leaked. He also planned to go over and kill Zuyun after recovering some spiritual power. There was a look of pride on his face as he said, this is an ancient furnace. But its function is not to refine elixirs, but to warm and nourish spiritual fire. After hearing this, both Mengwei and Zuyun suddenly realized. But Mengwei, who has obtained the secret, has begun to lose his vitality. Just because she felt that she had helped Zuyun achieve his goal, there was nothing she could do about what would happen next. Zuyun, this is the reason why I don't want to be your Taoist companion. How can I be worthy of someone who may die at any time? Mengwei murmured to herself, her voice was extremely weak, and even she felt that no one could hear it except her. That's why I said it so boldly. What did you say? Ye Xianming saw Mengwei opening his mouth but no sound came out, so he couldn't help but ask. He hasn't shown off enough yet. Ye Xianming felt very happy to be able to show off in front of a prodigy who was once famous throughout Yeazhu. However, just when he moved himself closer to Mengwei, Zuyun suddenly exploded. He said you were going to die. Following Zuyun's roar, the middle-grade spiritual sword flashed a huge golden light and rushed straight towards Ye Xianming. It was the first move Zuyun had learned since entering the immortal world, releasing sword energy. Seeing the sword light coming towards him with such majestic momentum, Ye Xianming jumped up suddenly and threw a bunch of earthen armor talismans in front of him. Boom! It has to be said that Ye Xianming is still very experienced. Although the earth armor talisman was thrown out at once, there were layers of earth armor blocking him one after another. Even though the sword energy released entirely from the metal spiritual power was unmatched, it was completely consumed by the earth armors one after another. Ye Xianming clasped his hands behind his back and said with full sarcasm, "Master Nephew, you are good." He woke up so quickly and found such a good opportunity for a sneak attack. It's a pity that you have been a master uncle and I have been in the Peeper realm for hundreds of years. Is it for nothing? Zuyun's eyes widened angrily, and he gritted his teeth and said, "So, uncle, do you think my 10 years of cultivation as an immortal have been in vain? 10 years ago, I didn't know you." Ye Xianming retorted, "Even if we know each other, what else can you do?" But as soon as he finished speaking, an extremely huge aura of demon power swept over from behind him. It's Zhao Kamang. It turns out that Zuyun's purpose of releasing his sword energy was to cover up the sound of Zhao Kamang's footsteps with this huge momentum. He never felt that he would have any advantage in attacking head-on, so his first killer move was Zhao Kamang's demonic claw in the late stage of foundation building. Ye Xianming turned around and wanted to recall the spiritual fire to resist, but it was already too late. His pupils shrank into two black spots, and he watched helplessly as the sharp claws blocked his sight. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 174. Just when Zhao Kamang's demonic claws were catching Ye Xianming's head, the spiritual fire had already returned to Zhao Kamang's hands. Whoops! The fire instantly turned into a dragon and surged, but quickly turned into a small flame again. Because Zhao Kamang had already taken off Ye Xianming's head and crushed it into pieces at the same time. The spiritual fire lost contact with its master, and it was so smart that it hid under the cauldron again. But Zuyun had no time to pay attention. Instead, he hurriedly ran to Menguia, only to see her eyes closed tightly and her lips bloodless. There was a trace of blood on her lips, which was the blood that overflowed from her forced bite of the tip of her tongue. "Menguia, wake up." Zuyun felt a twinge of pain in her heart, put her hands on her shoulders, and shook her while shouting, "Wish, Wish Yun." Menguia's eyelids trembled slightly and he opened them with difficulty. "I'm so tired and want to sleep." "No. You can't sleep." Zuyun was extremely anxious. He saw the lifelessness in Menguia's eyes. It was obvious that he would never wake up again after falling asleep. What to do? By the way, elixir. Let's keep him alive first. As for the intention to die, bring her to Luo Yanran, there will always be a way. Thinking of this, Zuyun quickly said, "Just hold on, I'll get you some pills." After saying that, he rushed to Zhao Kamang's body without hesitation and snatched his storage bag. When I came back, my hands were full of porcelain bottles. He believed that as an elixir demon, Zhao Kamang must have many miraculous elixirs in his storage bag. Zuyun was in a hurry. Every time he poured out an elixir, he would quickly bring it to the tip of his nose and smell it to identify the main ingredient of the elixir, so that he could find one to extend Menguia's life. No, these pills all act on spiritual power. The red blood pill won't do it either. It just replenishes the blood. Menguia will lose his vitality unless he has the endless life pill. Breaking boundary pill? There are such powerful pills, but why is there no life-threatening pill? After pouring out all the elixirs and looking through them, he didn't find any that were useful. Instead, a piece of parchment caught his attention. Spirit Fire Symbiosis Technique. This is. In his anxiety, Zuyun couldn't help but take one more look and was overjoyed. It turns out that this is a magic method about spiritual fire. According to what is written on the parchment, as long as there is a spiritual fire in the body, by practicing this method, one can coexist with the spiritual fire. The spiritual fire is immortal, and the soul is immortal. The reason why Ye Xianming died on the spot just now was because the spiritual fire was not in his body. At the same time, Zhao Kamang's speed was too fast, and the spiritual fire flew back to his palm. Before it could form a connection with the soul, his head was already crushed. Of course, because of this spiritual fire has been preserved. Mengwei, don't sleep, I'll give you a gift. There is no other way at this time. This is undoubtedly the last straw that can save Mengwei. No matter what, Zuyun intends to treat a dead horse as a living horse. Gift. Mengwei, who was about to close her eyes again, couldn't help but perked up again when she heard Zuyun said he would give her something. However, she was at the end of her strength, and her energy quickly dissipated. Yes, I will give you a spiritual fire, and from what I can see, this is at least an earthly fire. Seeing Mengwei's reaction, Zuyun was also very excited. How could he tell the level of this fire? He just said it casually, hoping to make Mengwei persist longer. But Mengwei had already guessed that the earth fire that Zuyun was talking about must be the fire dragon that Ye Xianming heard him. Just as he was about to tell him that the fire had a restraining effect on him, Zuyun took the sheepskin of the spiritual fire symbiosis art. He flicked the paper and opened it with both hands so that Mengwei could see the content on it. This method is not difficult. With your experience in the pill formation stage, you can definitely understand it quickly. Zuyun understood it himself and felt that Mengwei shouldn't be a problem. And Mengwei really understood the mystery at a glance. Maybe this method is difficult for the foundation building stage, but for her who was in the pill forming stage, it is nothing more than communicating with the spiritual fire through the soul. She sighed slightly in her heart, that's all, you will feel at ease when I die. She didn't think she could survive after the spiritual fire entered her body, but she couldn't bear to see Zuyun disappointed, so she simply agreed. Zuyun, I remember, you start. Mengwei took a strong breath, then closed his eyes and waited for death to come. When Zuyun saw Mengwei agreeing, he was so excited that he didn't notice what she was thinking at this time. He turned back and ran towards the furnace. It didn't take a single breath for Zuyun to see the trembling flames hiding under the furnace. Because of the spirit fire symbiosis technique, the spiritual power of the spirit fire was completely exhausted by Ye Xianming's full blow. Even though it had recovered a little while hiding under the furnace, when Zhao Kamang took action to kill Ye Xianming, his spiritual power was drained away again. How much time has passed now? Trying to resist Zuyun is tantamount to shaking a tree from afar. Come here you go. Zuyun was not polite at all. He stretched out his palm to gather the spiritual power of chaos and grabbed it towards the flames. But just as he was about to catch it, a hot current suddenly emerged from his lower abdomen, rushing up along the meridians, and actually directly dispersed the chaotic spiritual power and turned into a flame. It was the burning sky flame. It was out of his control again. Eat, delicious. Just as Zuyun was astonished, burning sky flame spoke human words, like the tone of a mentally retarded child, but he couldn't laugh at all. Eat. If burning sky flame was eaten, what would he use to save Mengwei? Go back. Zuyun hurriedly shouted at burning sky flame, and at the same time, he clenched his right palm and held it tightly in his hand, but felt a struggle. Then, Zuyun stretched out his left palm again to condense the chaotic spiritual power and grabbed the flame in his hand. But in an instant, he felt that the flame at this time was completely different from the previous reaction. If he had been a little afraid of Zuyun before, he now felt the fear in it. Is it afraid that burning sky flame will eat it? Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then came back to his senses. This was not the time to study this matter, so he immediately turned around and walked towards Mengwei. Mengwei, here I come. I will press this spiritual fire into your lower abdomen, and you quickly practice the spiritual fire symbiosis technique. It was a matter of life and death, and Zuyun didn't care that her lower abdomen was her sensitive area. What kind of intimacy between men and women was completely thrown behind her mind. Mengwei trembled all over, but thinking that he was about to die, he simply responded boldly. Yeah. While speaking, Zuyun suddenly leaned over with his left hand, and after getting close, he quickly opened his palm, and before the spiritual fire could react, it had already stuck to Mengwei's flat lower abdomen. Boom! Mengwei felt that her heart was beating violently as if struck by thunder. Although there was a thin layer of clothes between them, the touch brought by Zuyun's broad palm made her completely forget the situation she was in. In her mind, as if light and shadow emerged, she seemed to feel that she was still in the spirit sword sect. At the bottom of the Magian cliff, in the midst of the formation, she was still a 10-year-old girl, and was led by Zuyun, who was also a child, to escape from the dangerous place. 10 years, like a dream. Until Zuyun woke him up with a low shout. Mengwei, what are you doing? Hurry up and run the spirit fire symbiosis technique. Feeling the disappearance of the touch, replaced by the warmth from her lower abdomen, she suddenly lost consciousness. What's going on? Doesn't this spirit fire completely restrain me? Why am I not dead yet? What's wrong with you? Looking at Mengwei, who opened his eyes and was confused, Zuyun didn't know what to say. Ah! Mengwei suddenly came back to her senses. Since she was not dead, why not give it a try? Thinking of this, she silently recited the formula in her heart, sank her mind, slowly looked inward, and communicated with the spiritual fire. In the empty and powerless Danshan, the spiritual fire was trembling under her shadow-like Taoist platform, saying in a dream-like voice, "Don't eat me, don't eat me." Mengwei just felt funny, but did not forget her purpose. The state of the spiritual fire at this time was just right for her to take advantage of it, so as to subdue it and use it for her own use. As for the consequences, she didn't care at all. Mengwei knew that spiritual fire was an extremely rare thing. If she could subdue one in her lifetime, she would not have lived in vain. She chuckled and began to run the spiritual fire symbiosis formula with all her strength. The spiritual fire had no power to resist, or it dared not to resist at all, and was easily subdued by Mengwei. Then what's next is to coexist with it? Finding that she was fine, Mengwei was also surprised. She decided to go all out and continue with the last step. However, when she was completely connected with the spiritual fire, something strange happened. The spiritual fire grew stronger and suddenly raged in her Danshan. In the blink of an eye, her Taoist platform was shattered, and Mengwei lost consciousness instantly. Outside, the scene Zuyun saw was that Mengwei's realm fell again and again. She was originally just a person with scattered vitality and no spiritual power, but suddenly she became immortal. He was terrified and quickly put his hand on Mengwei's white wrist. He felt a strong and powerful pulse. Is this okay? Zuyun was stunned. After a closer look, Mengwei's breathing was weak but stable. Compared to before, it seemed like he was really asleep. As long as we are alive, it's fine. We can always practice to get back to the state, right? Zuyun shook his head secretly, stuffed all of Yesuanming's pills and her life-defining magic weapon into the storage bag, put away the furnace, and then hugged Mengwei by the waist, ready to put him on Zhao Kamang's back and return to the original place. Unexpectedly, two familiar figures rushed over with light. It was Jian Tianming and Mu Qingxin. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 175. Zuyun? It's you. Mu Qingxin's eyes suddenly shrank, revealing a look of hatred, and then she shouted sweetly, Jian Tianming, capture them alive. Jian Tianming's expression was indifferent, yes, master. After saying that, she raised her ice blue sword and fired towards Zuyun. The target is Zuyun's knees. Zhao Kamang, stop her. Zuyun held Meng Wei with both hands. He couldn't think of any way to deal with it. In desperation, he immediately summoned Zhao Kamang to resist. Although they were both in the late stage of foundation building, Zhao Kamang was a little weaker, but his demon body was able to offset this difference. Furthermore, he was completely under the control of Zuyun, not afraid of life and death, and his claws glowing with a demonic light grabbed the ice blue sword like a white blade with bare hands. Clang! The sound of gold and iron clashing sounded. Zhao Kamang took a step back, some ice slag fell between his claws, and the ice blue sword was slapped back in front of Jian Tianming by Zhao Kamang. This round, it's evenly divided. Zuyun had already distanced himself from Mu Qingxin. He gently placed Meng Wei on the grass, and then took out the middle-grade spiritual sword and held it in his hand. Mu Qingxin, what do you mean? I don't have such a grudge against you, do I? Zuyun glanced at Jian Tianming from the corner of his eye, and was confused by her behavior of calling Mu Qingxin her master just now. But she was now being dealt with by Zhao Kamang, and she had better resolve the conflict with Mu Qingxin first. Even if you can't untie it, it's not too late to fight or kill. Oh! Mu Qingxin smiled mockingly, stretched out her hand and took out a whip, flicked it in the air, and then said, I said that you and I have a mortal enemy. Do you believe it? Zuyun's face turned cold and said, You Zhuyang sect forced me to be imprisoned. You and I are strangers, but Master Zhuyang forced me to become a Taoist couple with you. That's all. I, Zuyun, have never held a grudge. Just because you saved my life when you were downstairs in Zhuyang. Mu Qingxin sneered and said, What you are saying is that you are just like those hypocrites in Wanjian Mountain. You are sanctimonious on the surface, but behind your back you are doing dirty things. Zuyun did not deny it, but instead admitted it carelessly, and even said sarcastically, Yes, I took away everything in Zhuyang Jinren's alchemy room. But if not, how could I know that you gave me the medicine? You want to turn me into your puppet. These things are just compensation for me from Zhuyang sect. Mu Qingxin's expression changed. You can open the locking formation of the golden Nanmu box. Zuyun said disdainfully, I can come out of the 9-turn 9-yang formation safely, so what does a mere lock-up formation mean? I had known that the pill given by Master Zhuyang at that time was by no means as simple as purifying spiritual power, so just keep it in reserve. You harmed others first, but you still have the nerve to tell me that we are irreconcilable? Mu Qingxin, Mu Xianxia. I, Zuyun, are not ruthless, but you still have the nerve to say such things. Then don't blame me, Zuyun, for breaking up with you. After saying that, Zuyun stepped forward and stabbed forward, but this was just a feint. But Mu Qingxin didn't know it at all. While raising the whip in front of her to protect herself, she vigorously used the fake wood spirit beads on her chest to form a shield. And Zuyun had already pinched a golden light talisman in his left hand at some point, and threw it fiercely forward. The golden light exploded, and everyone was blinded except Zuyun. Jian Tianming, take action quickly. In a panic, Mu Qingxin, who was almost inexperienced, screamed, but she had no idea that Jian Tianming endured the humiliation and had long guessed that the pill he had taken before was evil. Combined with Zuyun's information about the name of the elixir, purification of spiritual power, and turning into a puppet, he completely knew that if he showed the slightest disobedience in the past half-month, he would immediately become a puppet controlled by Mu Qingxin. The moment the golden light exploded, she used her spiritual sense to lock the position of the light door early, rushed out without hesitation, and left the secret realm. Even before leaving, his spiritual consciousness swept over Zhu Yun. Zhu Yun also instantly noticed that Jian Tianming wanted to escape, and immediately gave Zhao Kamang an interception order. Unfortunately, at this critical moment, Zhao Kamang was unable to see, and was simply at a loss as to what to do, so he let Jian Tianming escape from here. Zhu Yun secretly thought that it was not good, but he also knew that he could not pursue Jian Tianming. If he left here without any preparation, he would face more than 10 people in the danger stage. Forget it, let's solve the problem at hand first. Although Zhu Yun felt regretful, he also knew the priorities of the matter. If Mu Qing was still worried, he could not take Meng Wei away safely. But after such a delay, Mu Qingxin had already recovered her sight. Where is Jian Tianming Gren? Realizing that there was no one beside her, Mu Qingxin quickly used her soul sensor to find that her connection with Jian Tianming had been completely severed, and her expression darkened. Zhu Yun escaped, and even Jian Tianming escaped. Mu Qingxin suddenly became furious and whipped towards Zhu Yun. Crack! Zhu Yun had long felt that this long whip was unusual, so he immediately used his chaotic spiritual power to step aside and use his footwork to get out of the way. Taking advantage of the situation, he and Zhao Kamang formed a flanking attack on Mu Qingxin. Superior! Zhu Yun didn't hold back and immediately gave an order to Zhao Kamang, who immediately rushed towards Mu Qingxin. At the same time, the fingertips of Zhu Yun's left hand continued to change, and a Luo driven by pure fire spiritual power also rose. Court death. Mu Qingxin just lacked experience, not that he couldn't see the situation clearly. She made a prompt decision. After her first whip failed, she retracted her momentum and suddenly took a step forward. Not only did she avoid Zhu Yun's Li Huo attack, she also threw the whip towards Zhao Kamang's face. Zhao Kamang's fighting method was completely like that of a monster. He was not afraid of the oncoming whip. He just lowered his head slightly and wanted to use his horns to wrap around the whip before making subsequent attacks. But I never thought about it. Although this whip is not very powerful, it directly attacks the soul. And Zhao Kamang was controlled by Zhu Yun, using the power of his soul. I don't know what effect this whip had. It was just a light sound, and it directly broke the connection with Zhu Yun. From a puppet controlled only by Zhu Yun, he turned back into a monk who failed to practice 10,000 demon art and became a demon. Zhao Kamang, who had regained his demonic consciousness, instinctively feared the whip. Without saying a word, he used all four limbs together, turned around and ran away madly into the distance. This sudden scene not only dumbfounded Mu Qingxin, but also caught Zhu Yun off guard. Fortunately, Zhu Yun has experienced hundreds of battles, and Jian Tianming's sudden escape did not make him feel a little disturbed, let alone Zhao Kamang. Because he knew Mu Qingxin's methods very well, except for this weird magic weapon that came from nowhere. But Zhu Yun knew that all of Mu Qingxin's skills were based on that fake wood spirit bead. Wood type? Look at me Jin Kemu. Let the sword energy out. This time, Zhu Yun no longer used feints, but directly used the middle grade spiritual sword to shoot sword energy of pure gold spiritual power. Mu Qingxin came back to her senses and subconsciously wanted to use her whip to attack, but she suddenly realized that the sword energy seemed to be able to directly destroy her shield, so she immediately decided to avoid the edge for the time being. Also because she was out of reach, Mu Qingxin dodged the sword energy and quickly approached Zhu Yun, but she had no idea that Zhu Yun's sword energy released outside was no longer a false move, but it was also a move to lure the enemy. His purpose was to bring Mu Qingxin within his attack range, so that he would be unstoppable. Just when Mu Qingxin raised the whip again, Zhu Yun suddenly let go of the spirit sword with his right hand and made exactly the same movement as his left hand. Mu Qingxin was also very familiar with this action. The palms and fingers were spread to the extreme, the palms were facing her, and the left and right hands were on both sides of the temples. It was one of his grandfather Zhu Yang Zhenren's unique skills, the Golden Sun Curse. The middle-grade spiritual sword was thrust straight into the grass, and Zuyun's golden sun curse was also ready. The sky is filled with golden light again, but it is completely different from the golden light talisman. The sunlight, which was stronger than the sun at noon, shone directly on her green shield, and the sound was like the sound of broken glass. After more than 10 breaths, Zuyun panted slightly and took his hands back from his temples. The moment the shield formed by the fake wood spirit beads shattered, Mu Qingxin was destined to die. But the strange thing is, Zuyun clearly felt that when Mu Qingxin was about to die, her figure suddenly disappeared. And here, only the green beads that looked like bright pearls at night were left, and the whip that was basically in her hand. It's strange. Where did the person go? Was he directly blasted to pieces by the golden sun curse? Zuyun muttered to himself. He was sure that Mu Qingxin had not left this place, but he could not think of a reasonable explanation at all. But seeing that the crisis was over, Meng Wei was considered safe. He stepped forward, his eyes on the whip. Just looking at it with the naked eye, this whip is ordinary. On the contrary, the fake wood spirit bead began to slowly exude a trace of vitality. Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then smiled. Mu Yu Kong Sheng, it just so happens that Meng Wei's vitality is still very weak, and he has taken Xiao Yuan pill several times before, so his vitality must have been affected. How about using this pseudo-wood spirit bead to refine one for him that can be worn everywhere magical weapon, keep her warm. After making up his mind, Zuyun put the fake wood spirit beads into his storage bag and then picked up the whip. A warm feeling came from the wooden handle, which was extremely warm and comfortable. It seems to be a good thing, but it's a pity that I don't have time to study it now, and I don't have any hands on it. With continuous harvests and Meng Wei no longer in serious trouble, it will only get better and better in the future. Zuyun's mood is naturally self-evident, and he stuffs the whip into his storage bag while mumbling to himself. Only, just like Mu Qingxin couldn't take it in before, Zuyun also encountered this incomprehensible scene. Huh. He let out a sigh and looked at the middle-grade spiritual sword that was still stuck in the soil. After pulling it out, he easily put it into his storage bag. He scratched his head, very puzzled, and simply inserted the whip into his waist, then went back and hugged Meng Wei again. However, he faced another problem. The first time I picked up Meng Wei was because I was going to put him on the back of Zhao Kamang, who was a monster. But now, Zhao Kamang doesn't even know where he has gone. Do I still want to fly back with her in my arms? If I encounter an enemy in mid-air, I won't be able to fight back. At this time, I just heard a hum sound, and the cute and charming Meng Wei woke up quietly in my arms. Zuyun felt happy and quickly lowered his head, just in time to meet the eyes of Meng Wei, who opened his eyes. Meng Wei's cheeks turned red quickly, and he didn't know whether it was because of shyness or because it would be better to recover. Zuyun, why are you holding me? The dream is endless and as thin as the sound of mosquitoes. Zuyun wanted to explain righteously, I want to carry you to the mount, I don't have any unreasonable thoughts. But it's back to the original problem, there is no Zhao Kamang. Don't let me down. Meng Wei thought Zuyun was reluctant to let go, and couldn't help getting anxious. Oh, okay. Zuyun also forgot that Meng Wei had no spiritual power at this time, and was no different from a mortal. Once her hands loosened, she immediately became a fairy who fell into the mortal world. It was a real fall, but her butt landed first. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 176. Meng Wei then realized that he was powerless. He didn't care about his miserable appearance at the moment and couldn't help but screamed, Where is my spiritual power? Zuyun curled his lips and said, it's good to be alive. You can slowly cultivate your spiritual power in the future. It's not difficult to return to the foundation building stage with your talent. But Meng Wei wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Zuyun. Are you trying to say that your lifespan is not much? Without waiting for her to respond, Zuyun continued, there is always a way to solve it, but at least you should accept the reality in front of you first. Let's go. Meng Wei stood up from the ground, feeling a little uncomfortable all over, but he couldn't refute this. Seeing that Zuyun didn't enter the light gate, and didn't follow the original after returning to the road, he put his mind at ease and asked, where are we going? Of course, we're going to the center of the town to take a look. Zuyun stopped and turned to Meng Wei with a half smile, don't tell me that you didn't see the light column on me when you were chasing me. Yes, that light column. As he said that, Meng Wei's eyes suddenly lit up, did you find the treasure of the secret realm? However, Zuyun put away his smile and asked seriously, Meng Wei, tell me the truth. You and Palace Master Luo obviously know that the secret realm is in the holy object, and now that I have found the treasure, what do you think? Before, Luo Yanran hid in Meng Wei's sleeves, and the group had been together for more than half a month. At first, she had already hinted at the relevant things, but Meng Wei never mentioned the strange phenomenon caused by Zuyun to Luo Yanran. I didn't think much about it. Meng Wei shook his head, and a look of reminiscence appeared in his eyes. Since I can remember, Master has been reading the classics of the sect, trying to find the true use of this holy object. But I always feel that no matter what treasure it is, it belongs to the right person. You mean? The Yaluo sect is no longer there, and this holy object is only opened once every 100 years, which is not very meaningful. Moreover, the treasure is destined to be with you. If you can really get it, it will be your luck. Seeing this attitude, Zuyun was also very surprised. He asked curiously, aren't you afraid that Palace Master Luo will be angry with you for this? Meng Wei's face was full of indifference, and he said, I'm angry, the worst thing is to let her scold me. Besides, she only has one golden elixir left now, and I. At this point, Meng Wei thought that he had become immortal, and his expression became somewhat lonely. Let's talk about it when the time comes. Zuyun didn't know how to comfort him, but he was determined to get this fragment. If Luo Yanran really wants to attack Meng Wei, the master feels that he will definitely help. But the premise is that he has enough strength. Thinking of this, Zuyun didn't want to continue to be involved in this topic. Can we still go? If we can, let's go to the wooden house first. Yes. Meng Wei responded and followed Zuyun. At this time, the atmosphere at the bottom of Zilang Peak, which had become lively because the light gate was opened again, was a little weird. Everything started with Jian Tianming being the first to break out. Just because she was a female cultivator at the peak of the late foundation building stage, although there were traces of fighting on her body, according to common sense, this realm is already the strongest in the secret realm. If she really wants to come out, she will come out when the secret realm is about to be closed. But this is not the reason for everyone's surprise. Instead, Jian Tianming stepped on the sword as soon as he appeared and flew directly in front of Jian Chaiwu. Everyone's eyes were on her, and Jian Tianming naturally knew it, and did not reveal his identity in public. But he said something inexplicable to Jian Chaiwu. My heart goes where my sword goes. The confused Jindan stage cultivators saw Jian Chaiwu's face suddenly reveal an incredible look, and then he said, follow me, and turned around and flew away from Zilang Peak. And Jian Tianming quickly followed. It was precisely because of this that Daegu and Chen Hua, who had Luo Yanran's golden elixir hidden in their sleeves, were ignored by all the cultivators. They also took the opportunity to escape from here, and fortunately, the aura of the two was only at the initial stage of foundation building. Even if someone discovered their movements, not many people would care. Because at this time, there would be some cultivators who were ready to stop coming out, and they cared more about their own disciples, not the two strange female cultivators. Dozens of miles away from Zilang Peak, on a deserted plain, Xianxia, unable to suppress the excitement on his face, said, "Tianming, is that you?" The serious Tianming finally smiled, and it was unknown whether he had escaped to heaven and was finally safe, or whether he met his old friend again after hundreds of years. "It's me." Like the sound of nature, it sounded in Xianxia's ears. He was surprised and said, "It's really great to be back. Now you have recovered your cultivation to the peak of the late stage of foundation building. I don't know when you can condense the golden elixir again. By the way, do you know that we have already started the decisive battle with Haori sect?" Jian Tianming nodded, and then said, "I also recovered my memory in the secret realm, and I encountered some troubles. I need to return to Wanjian Mountain as soon as possible." Jian Chaiwa's eyes condensed, and he said in a deep voice, "What trouble? Shiba is already on the way here. When he arrives here, he will take you back to Wanjian Mountain together, and I will help you solve the trouble. Is Shiba coming too?" Jian Tianming's eyes flashed with contempt, but it quickly disappeared. "Yes, it's rare for a teen to accept two apprentices, and this time they are also in the secret realm. Forget it, let's not talk about this, tell me what your trouble is." Jian Chaiwa knew that Jian Tianming had always looked down on Jian 18, not because of any contradiction, but because of personality, so he immediately changed the subject. Jian Tianming nodded slightly, then pointed to his temple and said, "It's just a small trouble in the secret realm, the most important thing is here." Jian Chaiwa couldn't help but frowned, above the soul. "Yes, so I need to find Jian Yi and soak in the sword pool." Jian Chaiwa just pondered for a while, and then threw an object from his sleeves. A small boat suddenly formed. At the same time, he took out a bag of spirit stones and threw it to Jian Tianming. "Since it's about the soul, then there's no time to lose, you drive my flying boat forward. These spirit stones will be used on the road for you, no need to save them. Then I won't be polite." Jian Tianming jumped onto the flying boat directly, bowed to Jian Chaiwu, and immediately drove the flying boat, flying rapidly towards the direction of Wanjian Mountain. On the other side, De Go and Chen Hua have already arrived at the town where they stayed before. "De Go, why do you still want to go to a crowded place?" Chen Hua was puzzled. Perhaps he expected that the first batch of people would come out of the secret realm, and some independent cultivators or sect forces who came to collect spiritual medicines also gathered early. The excitement was even greater than before the secret realm was opened. "Are you stupid?" De Go said with contempt, and whispered, "It's a long way to Yalao Mountain, and we are so beautiful now, it is inevitable that we will encounter some lustful male cultivators who will attack. And now that we are female, it also affects our sword use. After more than 10 days, the heat here will be reduced, and secondly, we can restore our original bodies and be more safe. So that's it?" Chen Hua's eyes lit up, and he felt that what De Go said made sense. Even Luo Yanran secretly agreed with De Go's decision. Of course, she felt that staying here would allow her to contact more people and find a female cultivator suitable for his golden elixir. After finding an inn at random and opening a room, Luo Yanran quickly flew out of his sleeve and said, "Boy, since you are still a woman, why don't you help me go to the street and see if you can trick a female cultivator to come and possess this palace master?" De Go's eyes widened suddenly, and then he shook his head repeatedly and said, "Senior, I have never dealt with female cultivators, let alone seduce them." Luo Yanran calmed down and counted his breaths, and then quickly flew in front of Chen Hua. "Senior, De Go is the first female cultivator I have met. I have never come into contact with female cultivators before. You." Luo Yanran was choked up, and then flew back into De Go's sleeve angrily. She knew that this matter really couldn't be difficult for them. Let's not talk about whether they can trick a suitable female cultivator back. If the matter is exposed, it will be a matter of life and death if they encounter trouble in a market town with many people and eyes. The two looked at each other and saw the same relieved expression. But before they could catch their breath, two footsteps were heard outside the door, walking straight towards their room. Their hearts tightened, not knowing where the mistake was, and the wooden door was pushed in. A mentally retarded monk with drooling mouth and a problem in his brain turned around with excitement and said to the person behind him, "Dad, you said I can only play with female cultivators in the early stage of foundation building. The two I just saw are really here." Dago and Xianxia looked at each other. What the hell is going on? Just now he said he was afraid of monks who raped women, so he thought that there were many people in the market town and normal people could not do such a thing. But in the end, an abnormal person came to rape. But listening to what he said, the two quickly looked behind the mentally retarded monk, and their pupils suddenly shrank. I saw that the monk was introverted and his realm could not be seen at all. Not to mention Dago, even Xianxia could feel that this person was much stronger than their master Xianxia, at least a late Jindan strongman. At this time, he smiled slightly and said, "Two fairies, I am Li Chengan, the leader of Haori sect. When my son Li Hairan was practicing Xiangong, he encountered a bottleneck and became unconscious, and needed to practice double cultivation to recover. If the two fairies are willing." This seemed to be asking for the consent of the two, but they all knew that the amiable face of the Jindan stage was always a smile with a knife hidden in it. They couldn't refuse at all. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 177. Both of them showed smiles that were uglier than crying. At the moment, they had no choice but to agree first. The one who was more helpless than them was, of course, Luo Yanran, who was tricked into the big dog's sleeves. "That's very good." Li Chengan was extremely satisfied. He took a step forward and took out two storage bags from his arms. Each bag contains 1,000 spiritual stones, which will be regarded as a meeting gift for me. When the two of them took over, Li Chengan smiled and said, "There is something I need to say hello to the two fairies in advance. In this state, if Quanzi uses brute force during dual cultivation, I ask the two fairies to forgive me for a moment. I am very grateful. Thank you very much in the future. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter." The big dog almost said these words through gritted teeth. "Ha ha ha," Li Chengan smiled heartily and said, "But you two fairies don't need to worry. There are too many people waiting here, and I'm afraid there will be too much noise, so I'll take you two with me and follow Kwanzaa back to Haori section practice the method of dual cultivation." The two big dogs understand, this is to make them mentally prepared first. However, this way, they also had a little more time to think about escape strategies. However, can the two of them, who are in the early stages of building a foundation, escape under the nose of a strong man like Li Chengan? In the secret realm. After all, Zuyun was dissatisfied with Menghui's mortal body and walked too slowly. Finally, after getting Menghui's consent, he held her hand and flew with the sword. It just slowed down the speed and height, and it took some time to reach the big formation. On the way, Zuyun also asked about Sun Suanhua's situation. Zuyun couldn't help but be stunned when he learned that he had gone to Chuzhu. But when he thought that Sun Suanhua also had the means to protect himself, he felt relieved. "I don't know if I can meet him if I go to Chuzhu in the future. But there are no such itinerary plans recently, and the role has been put aside for the time being. For now, let's get this piece of the puzzle together first. There's actually a house here." After entering the big town, under the guidance of Zuyun, the two entered the small formation one after another. When they saw the small courtyard, Menghui was also amazed and surprised. Zuyun looked directly at the room with the open door. It looked like a utility room. He asks Yang Menguia, "Are you going to wait in the yard or come with me?" After asking Gai Wen, Zuyun still hoped from the bottom of his heart that Menguia would stay in the yard. After all, what might happen next was related to his biggest secret. At this moment, a cheerful sound of horse hooves came over. The two of them heard the sound and turned out to be the spirited horse. "Hey, why is there a horse among this sacred object?" Menguia was very curious, and with a startled voice, the horse ran in front of him. It first rubbed against Zuyun's chest, and then looked at Menguia curiously. It has become a spiritual beast and has initially opened up some spiritual wisdom. In addition to being close to Zuyun, it also has a nature of loving houses and birds. Is this horse a spiritual beast? Menguia's eyes lit up, he immediately became interested, and immediately decided to stay. Zuyun breathed a sigh of relief and then said easily, "Then I'll go in and take a look. If anyone comes over, just call me." Menguia didn't even look at him, he just responded softly to show that he knew. Zuyun flicked the mane on the horse's neck, then turned back and entered the room. What was visible to the eye was an extremely ordinary firewood shed layout, but Zuyun didn't look much at it, but looked directly at the shelves next to the wall. Just like the alchemy room in the third fragment, the cabinets are filled with alchemy recipes. If you can find relevant objects on the shelves here, can you also guess the function of this fragment? Zuyun focused his attention on those strange tools, which were a bit messy and had obviously been tampered with. After guessing, only Mu Qingxin had this possibility. What kind of room is this? Zuyun frowned and looked at it carefully, but he couldn't connect these tools together at all. Zuyun quickly gave up the idea. After fusing the fragments, he would have plenty of time to guess. He withdrew his gaze and began to look elsewhere. But the house is so big, it's impossible to find the key. Is it true that the only way to fuse the fragments is outside? But this space is obviously not recognized as the owner, so can't I just use it for my own use? He looked outside the house in confusion, and saw Menguia playing Zhenghuan, already riding on the horse. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind, and he closed the wooden door of the room without hesitation. At that time, the reason why this wooden house was discovered was because he was carried by a spirit horse with a beam of light that reached the sky. The light beam also disappeared instantly after rushing into the small formation. Why did the light pillar rise? Isn't it because I want to enter the Dewu glazed mirror in this secret realm? It is precisely because of the conflict between two parallel spaces that this is the case. So, what if there is a connection with the Dewu glazed mirror in this wooden house? He first took a few deep breaths to calm down, and then he thought about it. Instantly, the fragments in the chest suddenly vibrated. Immediately afterwards, another beam of light shot up from the chest, which was exactly the same as the first abnormality. "Are you coming?" Zuyun was extremely nervous. He murmured, looking forward to the opportunity to directly merge with the secret realm. Unexpectedly, my feet began to vibrate. The house began to shake, from slow to fast, from slow to fast. On the other side of the shelf, there was a loud banging sound, and all the tools on it were knocked down. Zuyun looked solemn and released his spiritual consciousness to cover the entire room, hoping to find some clues. But except that the vibration became more intense, he still found nothing. But outside the house, to be precise, outside the entire formation, earth-shattering changes had taken place. Those exit light doors that had been opened kept flickering, flickering on and off, as if they might dissipate at any time. This sudden change made all the monks who were still hunting for treasures suddenly panic. They were afraid that they would be locked in a secret realm with their lives unknown, so they tried their best to rush towards the nearest exit in panic. And at the foot of Zilang Peak, whether it was the Danja people floating in the air or the various monks waiting on the ground, they all looked at the treasure hunters pouring out of the light with incomprehensible expressions. It stands to reason that the secret realm will not end in 3 days. But it's only been half the time, why are you running away in a hurry? Is it possible that there is some kind of horror in the secret realm? Ergu, who had been hiding in a low-lying area, also thought about the possibility of the secret realm being closed. He originally planned to take the opportunity to escape, but when he thought that Zuyun and Menghui had not come back, he could not tell him about De Go and others. Where to go? I decided to wait a little longer. However, the secret light door that was originally visible in the distance suddenly disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Am I being locked up in a secret realm? Ergo stood up suddenly and made a sound of fear. But then he became relieved again, and said to himself in a relaxed tone, it's better to stay here, so as not to go out and hold them back. And even if Xiao Zhu and De Go want to find me, they have to find me, that's it. It just so happens that I stay here to practice. According to what Xiao Zhu said before, 100 years have passed outside and 500 years have passed here. If I am still alive by then, I will definitely be in the pill formation stage. I hope I don't scare them. One jump. Ergu's idea is very simple. The spiritual energy here is rich and there is no danger. He even learned a lot about elixirs while traveling with Ye Xianming. In addition, Luo Yanran taught him a total of 3 exercises, and he regarded it as a retreat to practice hard. If you don't succeed, you will die. Like Ergu, there are many people who are still locked up in the secret realm. They are all too far away from the light gate and there is no time to escape. During the chi refining period, the strength was too low and the speed was simply not enough. As for the foundation building period, it can only be said that they have bad luck, such as Huang Lei and Huang Meng of Wangxian sect. Brother, can we get out? Huang Meng's voice was extremely trembling, because they originally had a chance, but when they stepped into the light door, they were squeezed away by a strange foundation building monk. Huang Lei did not respond, but looked around. After finding that there was nothing abnormal about him or the secret realm, he suddenly laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, junior sister, don't you think it is a great blessing to stay here? I am afraid that all the genius treasures in the entire secret realm will be in our pocket. When the next time the secret realm opens, we will then go out directly. With so many elixirs in hand, won't it be easy to revitalize the 10,000 Immortals sect? After hearing this, Huang Meng was immediately overjoyed. Junior sister, most of the people trapped here must be chi refining monks. We are in the middle stage of foundation building. It must be extremely easy to gather them. Let them search for elixirs here and make offerings every day. You and I only need to just practice with peace of mind and you will be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you are obedient, you will not be admitted as a disciple of Wangxian sect, but if you are disobedient. Huang Meng also showed a cruel look in his eyes, kill him directly. Let's go. Now that those in the chi refining period are at a loss, we can take advantage of it. I hope they can understand the current situation and be obedient. Huang Lei gave the order, and Huang Meng followed him and ran away in any direction, while releasing his spiritual consciousness unscrupulously, not sparing a corner at all. Because of this, they discovered Ergu's figure in that low-lying area. Huh? 9th level of chi refining. Huang Lei immediately saw the realm of Ergu, and when he was about to show off his power, he discovered that it was a stunning female cultivator. I wonder why Senior is here. Ergu was extremely frightened. He was afraid that during these 2 foundation building periods, he would be angry with him because he could not get out of the secret realm. Originally, he was not afraid of death, but he finally figured out that he could stay in the secret realm and practice safely, but he didn't expect that 2 foundation building periods had come. I am Huang Lei, the leader of Wangxian section. We are both left in the secret realm, so we are destined. Huang Lei narrowed his eyes and said, if you want to survive safely, you have only one choice, and that is to join our Wangxian sect and become a disciple. The 2 dogs were stunned. They had been with the big dog Chen Hua for more than half a month. How could they not know about Wang Xian sect? Unexpectedly, these two people who abandoned their companions would be left in the secret realm. Ergu rolled his eyes and agreed. 8 years of mining have made his ability to be conceited and submissive deeply rooted in his bones. Very good. Huang Lei shook his head slightly. You should follow the deputy sect leader first and make a move. Remember not to have anything on your mind, otherwise this will be your burial place. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 178. Disciple Zhou Yu, remember the sect master's teachings. Ergu still remembered that he was a girl at this time, so in a hurry, he used his sister's name as a pseudonym. Huang Lei nodded, and then told Huang Meng, junior sister, Zhou Yu's realm is still low. If you go with me again, I'm afraid the speed will be much slower. Why don't we act separately? Huang Meng knew what Huang Lei meant and wanted to gather all the qi refining stage here as soon as possible, so she said, senior brother, just go ahead. Junior sister, I can just talk to Zhou Yu about the rules of the sect. That's great, then senior brother, I'll go. Huang Lei didn't stop and immediately ran away. Seeing Huang Meng's eyes fall on him, Ergu hurriedly saluted, meet the deputy sect master. Yes. Huang Meng hadn't enjoyed the respectful address of his disciples for a long time. He signaled with his nose and walked in another direction with Ergu. While walking, he proudly talked about what was going to happen next. In the wooden house, Zuyun's eyes were filled with a hint of joy. As he expected, Zuyun did not enter the Dao glass mirror, but he did not gain nothing. In his sight, it was still the wooden house, but there was always a scene looming in front of him. The cause of this situation was a huge fog. He was very familiar with this fog, which was the fog that surrounded his entire mirror space layer by layer. Through the fog, you can see a low stone mountain. There is a cave of unknown depth under the stone mountain. And on the left side of the cave is a medicine garden. In the medicine garden, from time to time, some short figures can be seen, moving back and forth in the spiritual medicine bushes of different heights, very happy. Especially a blood-colored shadow. This is the only spiritual medicine that Zuyun can recognize at this time. Next to the medicine garden is an independent small room. There is no doubt. This is the alchemy room in his Dao glass mirror. Now, it feels like the two spaces are attracting each other, and the distance is slowly getting closer. He is now fully confident that the secret realm will eventually connect with his mirror space. As time passed slowly, the fog between the two spaces seemed to fade away slowly. When Zuyun could fully see the scene in his Dao glass mirror, the distance was already very close. He resisted the urge to cross over, and stared at the gap between them as it slowly became smaller. He heard his heavy breathing and the heartbeat like a drum on the battlefield. Finally, there was only the last finger width left. At the same time, Meng Wei in the courtyard suddenly found that Zuyun had not heard for a long time. After becoming immortal, it goes without saying that his spiritual consciousness is naturally gone, and he has lost his sense of the surrounding environment. Strange, where are the people? Being in the small formation, she could not detect the changes that had occurred in other parts of the secret realm. Even when she was playing happily with the horse, she didn't know that the feeling in the house was about to collapse. Just when Meng Wei was about to get off the horse and push the wooden door to see what was happening with Zuyun, she suddenly saw something flashing in front of her eyes. When she came to her senses, she found that she was already in a strange place. This was a small forest that was not too dense, and there was a hill a little further away. If it weren't for the horse still snorting gently under her crotch, she almost thought that she was injured by Xianming and was unconscious and had not woken up. Meng Wei was very surprised and wondered where this was. Several strange voices sounded around her. Didn't I just find a 300-year-old spiritual medicine? How did I fall into an illusion? What the hell is this place? Why is the spiritual energy so thin? It can't be an illusion, I don't even know you. Just as everyone was talking, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded, and at the same time, the pressure of the foundation building period came overwhelmingly around. I am Huang Lei, the leader of Xianxia sect, who is in the middle stage of foundation building. I don't care what this place is like. If you want to survive now, you have only one request: submit to me and become a disciple of Xianxia sect. At first, Huang Lei was also very surprised, but he saw that all the qi refining stage cultivators had gathered here, and he didn't find any foundation building cultivators. He secretly said in his heart that God help me, and immediately used his realm to pressure everyone. It didn't matter where it was. What was important was that he found the pleasure of being a supreme strong man again, and at the same time he could control these qi refining cultivators for his own use, thus strengthening Xianxia sect. Under such a realm pressure, no matter how many qi refining levels they were, all kneeled on the ground with their knees soft. Except Meng Wei sitting on the spirit horse, and Ergu who had been following Huang Meng. But Meng Wei reacted quickly. She knew that she was unable to deal with the qi refining stage at this time, let alone the foundation building stage. She immediately clamped her legs on the horse's belly and wanted to turn around and leave. Huh? How can a mortal still move under my pressure? Is that horse different? Huang Lei's attention was all on the horse, and he did not recognize Meng Wei. At the same time, there was no spiritual power fluctuation on Meng Wei's body, and she didn't care at all. The important thing is that the spiritual horse was not unaffected, at least its movements had slowed down by more than 30%. You are just a mortal ant, why don't you get off the horse and kneel down when you see the leader of this sect? At this time, Ergu had already recognized Meng Wei, and he immediately shouted in their ears and said at the same time, Sect Master, Deputy Sect Master, these mortals just let the disciples show their skills. Huang Lei is putting pressure on these people, and Huang Meng is even trying to sneak up on the side. Ergu takes the initiative to ask for help. That would be great. Okay, it just so happens that the sect leader has never seen what you are capable of, so go and come back quickly. Ergu was not in a hurry to be happy, but responded calmly, Sect Master, your pressure covers that place, and the disciple is afraid that I will not be able to use my full strength. Before he finished speaking, Huang Lei knew what he was thinking and quickly took back some of the pressure there. And taking advantage of this moment when the pressure was greatly reduced, the horse quickly turned around, spread its hooves and was about to run away. Meng Wei also heard Ergu's voice, and was so confused about how to save him that he simply forgot to communicate with the horse. Seeing the horse carrying Meng Wei away from here, Ergu turned around and slapped Huang Meng in a hurry. Great nether transformation palm. Huang Meng never imagined that Ergu would dare to attack her at this time, so he slapped her hastily. Bang! The two palms faced each other and made a crisp sound, which immediately shocked everyone. Although Huang Meng mainly practiced magic, he was in the foundation building stage after all. Ergu immediately vomited blood after being slapped by her, and flew quickly in the direction of Meng Wei. Palace Master Meng, run quickly. Ergu endured the severe pain in his body, roared, and grabbed the pony's tail with his hands. When the horse was not afraid of Huang Lei's pressure, he had already discovered that this was the only chance of survival. It seemed that his life should not be cut off. Ergu finally grabbed the base of the ponytail. How could he dare to let go at such a critical moment? He almost used all his strength to hold on. The horse was in pain and became even more frantic. Its speed suddenly increased, like an arrow leaving the string. That's Yaloo Sex Meng Wei. When he heard the words Master Meng Shao Palace, Huang Lei had already woken up. Although I don't know why Meng Wei turned into a mortal body, what if she was just injured and hid her strength? And he has already exposed his sect name. When the time comes, the killer will return. Thinking of this, Huang Lei couldn't care less about these qi refining periods, and immediately shouted to Huang Meng, "Junior sister, chase after me quickly, otherwise we will have no hope of restoring the immortal sect." Huang Meng also knew that this was an emergency, and he didn't even have time to respond. He followed Huang Lei closely and chased in the direction of Mengwei. As if they had been granted amnesty during the qi refining period, all the people who dared to stay there fled in all directions and disappeared in the blink of an eye. As for that horse, even Jian Tianming and Mu Qingxin, who was riding the monster Zhao Kamang, couldn't catch up at that time. One can only imagine how fast it could be. Not to mention that she was beginning to gain intelligence and could understand Mengwei's words that it would die if caught. In this way, I ran faster. If Mengwei hadn't told him not to get rid of the two dogs, he would have waited on him early. Zhu Yun, the culprit who caused this situation, had no idea what was going on. Even his attention was completely attracted by Zhao Kamang in front of him. After the two spaces were completely connected, Zhu Yun's body also underwent earth-shaking changes, that is, the mirror on his chest suddenly had a fragment. Just when he was wondering how this fragment came out of thin air, he heard the movement outside the house, and then he thought about opening the door and going out to take a look. He found that Zhao Kamang, who was supposed to escape, appeared in the small courtyard. I saw him lying on all fours on the ground very obediently. It's strange. Didn't he lose the spiritual connection with me? Zhu Yun clearly remembered that it was Mu Qingxin who whipped him, and then he could no longer control Zhao Kamang and watched him run away for his life. Even, the whip is still stuck in his waist at this time. He touched his chin, confused. Forget it, there are too many things that I can't figure out, let's see what the situation is now. Zhu Yun suddenly raised his head and looked outside the small courtyard. Even though he had prepared himself in advance, he was still extremely shocked at this moment. Opposite the small courtyard is the alchemy room and medicine garden. Am I, in my own Diwu glass mirror? After muttering to himself, he suddenly came back to his senses. Mu Ran's eyes widened. Wait a minute, where are Mengwei and the horse? When he thought that Mengwei was just immortal, Zhu Yun felt extremely anxious. But here he has nowhere to go, so he wants to leave the Daewoo glazed mirror at this time, wondering if he is still in the secret realm. Leave. Zhu Yun couldn't care too much. He shouted in his heart and appeared in a familiar grove. Feeling the thin spiritual power here, he couldn't help but exclaimed, Yunzo. He remembered, wasn't this where he wanted to take the horse into the mirror space? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 179. Zhu Yun never thought that one day he would return to Yunzhou. But no matter what, the most important thing now is to find Mengwei first. Just as he was about to enter the Diwu glazed mirror again and find out what was going on in the wooden house, he suddenly saw messy footsteps on the ground out of the corner of his eye. He was slightly startled, and after just a few more glances, he immediately discovered that there were signs of a fight here. At the same time, there are horse hoof prints a little further away. He recognized it at a glance. These were the horse's hoof prints. It's strange. Could it be that after the secret realm of my home was fused, Mengwei and Ma were driven outside? He frowned slightly and looked thoughtfully at the messy footprints on the ground. Forget it, don't worry about it for now, that horse is very fast, I'll just ride Zhao Kamang. Zhu Yun quickly entered the mirror space again, and then rode out on Zhao Kamang. Just when he was about to follow the horse's hoof prints, several foundation building spiritual power fluctuations suddenly came from not far away. In the blink of an eye, 3 monks in the foundation building stage fell from the sky, fell into the woods, and stood a dozen steps in front of Zhu Yun. Seeing Zuyun riding a monster beast, the expressions of the three of them changed slightly. Then, the man standing in the middle took a step forward, raised his hands to Zuyun and said loudly, "Are you a fellow Taoist from the sea monster cave?" Kraken. Cave. Zuzu suddenly remembered that he had heard shopkeeper Li from Fang City say that the main forces in the sea area were 36 cave heavens. Obviously, these people regard themselves as sea monks. Zuyun did not want to cause trouble, so he neither agreed nor denied, but asked instead, "What are the three Taoist friends here for?" "Fellow Taoist, it's not like there was a fight here just now. The movement is not weak. I will be on duty today, so I will come over and take a look. Since we are fellow Taoists from the Siren Cave, everything will be fine." Seeing that Zuyun didn't take action immediately, he felt much more relaxed during this foundation building period. "I see. Since there's nothing else, I'll leave first and say goodbye," Zuyun said casually and asked Zhao Kamang to turn around and leave. He had lost his soul connection with Zhao Kamang and could only give orders. But fortunately, Zhao Kamang could understand human language and turned around obediently. "Fellow Taoist, wait a moment." Seeing that Zuyun was about to leave so simply, Zhu Jiji quickly stopped. Zuyun frowned, but still stopped. The foundation establishment period obviously saw that Zuyun was unhappy at this time and said quickly, "Fellow Taoist, please tell the leader of your sect that the deadline is approaching and try to get the disciples to come back." Zuyun was confused, but he had no interest in asking. He still understood that talking too much would lead to mistakes. He nodded to show that he understood, and quickly left. It wasn't until Zuyun rushed out of the woods that a person standing on the left said angrily, "Third Elder, the people in Siren Cave are too arrogant." Another person also echoed, "Yes, I shouldn't have reminded him just now. If there are some mistakes, the alliance leader will naturally find them to settle accounts, so that Siren Cave will suffer a little." The foundation building stager, who was called the Third Elder, shook his head and said helplessly, "We each have our own support in the 35 caves, and this time, only the people from the sea monster cave can break through the many monsters and explore the restrictions in the sea. Now that they are in the limelight, it is better to do less than to do more." With that said, he turned around and walked along the way he came. The two people behind him hurriedly followed, and heard the Third Elder say, "Now I feel that Lord Shiva of Hyli sect is still the calmest in decision-making. Don't watch them leave. Although we and the Dongtian alliance are away, we are also far away from the place of right and wrong." One of them showed disdain and said disdainfully, "What Hyli sect is, it's just the Hehuan sect on the sea." The Third Elder shook his head and stopped talking. "But there is a secret thought in my heart. This is why I can become an elder while we are both in the foundation building period, but you can only be a deacon." This place was not too far away from Fangxi at that time. The group of 3 people only walked for more than an hour and had already returned to the outskirts of Fangxi. It was said to be a small city, but now it looks more like a small city by the sea. At first, the entire city was completely destroyed by the surging sea monsters. By the time the monks from 36 Cave Heaven seized the place, everything was already in ruins. Although Hyli sect left the alliance, there were still 35 sect forces willing to stay and develop here. After discussion, 35 regions were divided. Therefore, the entire area has expanded a lot, and it has begun to take shape as a city. Even under the careful management of the alliance leader and other sect leaders, the city is even more lively than the previous city. Several years have passed, and the reputation of Hyo City has spread throughout southern Yunzhou due to word-of-mouth spread among some monks. Whether you are a casual cultivator or some sect monks, as long as you buy all the things you need, you will immediately think of Hyo City. Because of this, the monks of Hyo City saw business opportunities. They took advantage of their familiarity with the sea area to collect various genius treasures to sell, and the scope of exploration continued to expand. Finally, by chance, someone discovered the treasure in the sea area. A huge formation restriction. This immediately caused a shock among the top leaders of the entire alliance. Their major forces have been traversing the sea area for at least 1,000 years, but they have never discovered this formation. This is enough to show how many people can be affected by it. Something to drool over. As a result, the senior officials of Hiu City issued a hush-hush order, strictly prohibiting anyone familiar with the matter from discussing the matter. Once everything is ready, the whole city will gather its strength to explore this formation. In recent months, the restrictions outside the formation have gradually weakened, making them finally feel that the time has come. They only need to deal with the group of monsters besieged outside the formation, and they will have a chance to enter. Nowadays, the High Le sect, which can control monsters by playing wind instruments, has withdrawn from the alliance, and the only one who can control monsters is the Sea Demon sect. This is also the reason why the Sea Monster sect monks have gained increasing status in Hiu City recently. Zuyun didn't know what drastic changes had taken place in the former city. At this time, he was sitting on Zhao Kamang's back, chasing closely along the horse's hoofprints. However, due to the different geology, the horseshoe prints gradually disappeared. Zuyun had no choice but to go straight. Like him, there were Huang Lei and Huang Meng from the Hope Immortal section. They couldn't catch up with Ling Ma's speed. They were pulled further and further away, and finally lost their trace, but they were getting more and more frightened. Because they flew over the small town at the foot of Lingjian Sect Mountain. "Senior, brother, is this Yunzhou?" Huang Meng asked in a trembling voice. She was condescending and could see many Spirit Sword sect disciples at a glance, all with long swords hanging from their waists. Huang Lei also looked incredulous and said in great surprise, "Yes, this is the Lingjian sect." Why did he suddenly return to Yunzhou from the secret realm? Before, they traveled thousands of miles and spent a lot of time to get to Diazhu, but who would have thought that they would just break into the secret realm and then return to Yunzhou? What the hell is going on? In shock, they completely forgot to look for any trace of Mengwei. "Brother, what should we do?" Huang Meng had no clue, and she had been taking orders from Huang Lei. "How do I know?" Huang Lei, who was also upset, responded angrily, and then said, "You and I have consumed a lot of spiritual energy, so why not go to the town below to rest for a while first?" After pondering for a moment, he added, "Besides, since this is Yunzhou, there is no need to worry that Mengwei can cause trouble for us. She must have no time to pay attention to us when she knows where she is. She can stay for a few days. Let's go back to the sect and take a look before making plans." After saying that, the two landed in the small town and randomly found an inn to stay in. After leaving Yunzhou for many years, it is better to be careful when coming back suddenly and ask more about things before talking. At the same time, seeing that there was no longer anyone chasing behind him, Mengwei finally stopped the spirit horse. Because she couldn't feel Ergu's physical condition, she was afraid that his injuries would become more serious over time. "How are you, Ergu? Are you okay?" Mengwei turned over and dismounted, looking at Ergu lying on the ground, panting heavily. Just when she asked the horse to stop, Ergu was unable to hold on any longer and fell down. But after taking a few breaths, Ergu also sat up with difficulty, showed a wry smile and said, "I'm okay, but I'm also very bad." Mengwei was puzzled and asked, "Is it good or bad?" "I say it's okay because my body is fine and I can still hold on." "I say it's not good because, Master Meng, do you know where you are now?" Mengwei shook his head, blinked again and said, "Don't call me young palace master. I am powerless now and worse than you. I don't know where I am, but I feel that I shouldn't be in the secret realm." "Yes, it is indeed not in the secret realm anymore." Ergu stood up, pointed to a mountain peak several miles away, and said, "That mountain is called Huangshi Mountain. My home is right there." Mengwei's eyes lit up. "What do you mean, this is Yunzhou?" Ergu took out a red blood pill from his storage bag and swallowed it. He felt that his energy and blood had become more stable, and then he said, I am very familiar with this mountain. It's good to go and avoid the limelight for a while. Yes. Why did you become immortal? Mengwei pretended to be angry and said, isn't it Zuyun who did this? Wait, since your home is here, then Zuyun's home is also here. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 180. Ergu is not stupid. He has long known that Mengwei has a very close relationship with Zuyun, far better than himself. So I don't worry about Mengwei hurting Zurong at all, not to mention that without her spiritual power, she is just an ordinary girl at most, maybe not as powerful as her own sister. After all, after she went out to cultivate as an immortal, some chores at home might fall on her. At the thought of seeing Zhou Ergu couldn't help but smile, and even forgot about the discomfort on his body. However, Mengwei's charming laughter interrupted Ergu's thoughts. He turned around and asked with a strange look on his face, Mengwei, why are you laughing? Are you happy that you can see your family? Mengwei tilted his head, but looked straight at Ergu and asked, but do you think they can still recognize you now? Ergu was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized. Yes, she is completely unrecognizable now. She is simply a woman. How can her family recognize her? But he quickly figured it out and said with an indifferent smile, it doesn't matter if you don't recognize it. There are some small hotels on the mountain. Let's relax there for a while and then make plans. He thought simply. Since he and Mengwei appeared in Yunzhou, Zuyun must be too. Based on his understanding of Zuyun, he believed that Zuyun would also go back to Huangshi Mountain to take a look, so that they could meet again, and he could also tell De Go and Chen Hua where they had gone. It's just that Ergu didn't know at all that Zuyun had almost completely broken off the worldly relationship, and didn't even know that they had returned to Barren Stone Mountain. At this time, he was galloping all the way, even passing through the small towns under the Lingjian section. It was not until he saw the Xiaofang city where he first came in the distance that Zhao Kamang suddenly stopped. My aimless search in such a large Yunzhou is tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack. And in Xiaofang city, didn't I happen to have an acquaintance there? At that time, he brought shopkeeper Li from Nanfang Fang city here and placed it here. And he also said that he would do some elixir business here. He must have a lot of friends, so you can definitely ask him about it. Thinking of this, Zuyun decided to ask shopkeeper Li for help without hesitation. In order to prevent Zhao Kamang from scaring some qi refining cultivators and causing chaos, Zuyun asked him to wait where he was while he walked towards Fangxi. However, the closer he got to Fangxi, the more he felt something was wrong. The simple streets are still lively with people coming and going. But there are no casual cultivators setting up stalls on both sides of the street. He looked strange, and after hesitating for a moment, he walked over. But just as he approached the gate surrounded by fences, a male cultivator dressed strangely came up to him with a charming smile on his face. Fellow Taoist, he said with a familiar look, but he immediately felt Zuyun's aura, and quickly changed his words with respect, Senior, are you also here to play with us? Is there a designated person? Zuyun frowned, glanced at the street, and finally understood. The male cultivator walking in looked excited, while the one walking out looked satisfied. Is this, still Fangxi? Shopkeeper Li, are you still there? He looked back and said in an indifferent tone, I'm not here to play, I'm here to find someone. Looking for someone. The male cultivator was also stunned, and then smiled and said, I wonder which female cultivator the senior is looking for. At your level, there are only a few top names who match your status. Zuyun's eyes widened and he said in a deep voice, I told you, I'm not here to play, and I'm not here to find a female cultivator. What I'm looking for is a male cultivator in the foundation establishment stage, his name is. Feeling the sudden surge in Zhu Yun's aura and the ill-intentioned look in his eyes, the male cultivator was so frightened that he almost cried, Senior, we don't have any male cultivators here to play with, let alone he said he likes Lonjiang's foundation building period. Upon hearing this, Zhu Yun felt his chest stagnate and almost couldn't catch his breath. He roared, the person I'm looking for is called Li Daqin. Is there such a person here? If you say something else, don't blame me for being rude. Li Daqin? Senior, are you looking for our elderly? The male cultivator finally came to his senses, with an incredible look in his eyes. Snort. Zhu Yun snorted coldly, not wanting to talk to him any more nonsense, lest he get angry to death. Either you take me to see him, or you go and let him come to see me. If you say one more thing, you'll die. Hearing a thump, the male cultivator was immediately frightened and his legs softened. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed uncontrollably. After all, he is just a small character like Mr. Turtle, and his strength is just a matter of practicing qi. How can he withstand being scared? You are very angry, deist. Why don't I, the sect leader, accompany you to vent your anger? At this time, a gentle voice like an oriole sounded leisurely, and the voice was still lingering in Zhu Yun's ears. The graceful figure had floated over and landed in front of Zhu Yun. Wearing a light yellow dress, her hair is a little messy, and there is a hint of charm in every move she makes. It seemed that he had just finished a hearty double cultivation session and rushed over immediately. She is Shabala of Highly Sect. Metropolitan. Zhu Yun didn't care who the visitor was or what sect this place had become, but he went straight to the point, I'm looking for Li Daqin. I heard that he is already an elder of your sect, so I want to meet him. He. Shibola covered her mouth with her hand and laughed like a silver bell. After laughing for a while, she said, I wonder what you want to see my husband for? He is not young, and he just practiced with me. He is lying on the bed and resting. You can tell me anything. Zhu Yun couldn't believe it. He almost doubted whether the shopkeeper Li he was talking about was Li Daqin from their sect. It's been less than 3 years, and the speed of things changing is too fast. Although he was amazed, Zhu Yun felt that since he was here, he should confirm whether it was Li Daqin. If it was true, with his current identity, it seemed that he could help him more. I can't tell you what's going on for now. If the Li Daqin you mentioned is the one I'm looking for, please let me know that Yunzu is here to visit. Yunzu! Shibola exclaimed, revealing an incredible look, and then asked in confusion, young friend Yun who can make pills. Zhu Yun was shocked. This was clearly the name that manager Li called him, and he immediately confirmed that he was still here. Immediately, he bowed and said, it's me. Strange, didn't Daqin say you went to Yeazhu to make a living? Why are you back to Yunzhou again? Shibola seemed to be asking Zhu Yun, but it was more like talking to himself. He gently stroked the hair beside his ears, turned around and said, young friend Yun, please follow me. Zhu Yun only hesitated for a moment and followed. On the street, many male cultivators in the Qi training period were not afraid, so what should he be afraid of? He walked all the way to the end of the street. The original few simple wooden houses have been completely renovated. Red and green, exquisitely decorated. At the window above the floor, there were some well-dressed female cultivators waving handkerchiefs at the male cultivators below, shouting seductive words. Zhu Yun only felt a little bit of heat in his body, but fortunately his soul strength was extraordinary and he could still control it. Shibola in front of him was also secretly paying attention to Zhu Yun. Seeing that he didn't seem to be affected at all, he was secretly surprised. Little friend Yun, who Daqin often mentioned, is indeed extraordinary. These disciples in the sect have made some progress in practicing the seductive sound. Ordinary foundation building period can't be so calm. It just so happens that we are short of manpower, maybe. While thinking, Shibola did not stop, but walked all the way to the innermost pavilion. Little friend Yun, please follow me, Dachan is resting in the house. Before entering the door, Zuyun also took a special look at the sign on the door. Yudan Pavilion. These three words made Zuyun a little unhappy. But he still didn't hesitate and followed Shibola into the lobby. Just then, footsteps were heard at the stairs. A middle-aged male cultivator was seen walking down the stairs while tidying up his clothes. He was mumbling something, with an unsatisfied expression on his face. Shibola shouted, "Dachan, look who's here." Li Dachan said dissatisfiedly, "I'm dressed, I won't take off my clothes no matter who comes." As he said that, he raised his head, and the moment he saw Zuyun, his expression froze, and his old face gradually turned red. Yun, why are you back again?" From the tone, it seems that Li Dachan is a little ashamed. Zuyun couldn't help but tease, "If I hadn't come back, how would I know that Manager Li not only became elderly, but also could live in broad daylight and enjoy himself? Don't laugh at me, Yun." Li Dachan hurriedly stepped forward, his eyes first slanted towards Shibola and said, "Xiaoxi, you deliberately brought Yun to laugh at me, right? Why don't you go and make a cup of tea?" This name made Zuyun very uncomfortable, but Shibola seemed to enjoy it very much. After walking away with a smile, Li Dachan looked solemn and whispered to Zuyun's ear, "Yun, did you also come back to Yunzhou for the formation in the sea? Warm ti."